Here's one. What do you call a jouster at the Renaissance Fair? Wait for it. A freelancer. Get it? Jousters use a lance? Freelancer? Really? You're killing me, Biggs. Welcome to Rubicon History. This is the Renaissance.
Bring out your dead! Bring out your dead!
As bubonic plague began to lessen in Europe, so did people's patience with the Catholic Church, the reigning power of the time. The Church tried desperately to keep its powerful influence over parishioners, but the people's interest began to shift towards the art, culture, and pursuits of the past, specifically those of the Greeks and Romans. To combat this shift, the Church tried to harp on the religious implications of this new attitude and trend.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Enough of this.
But the days of dancing on the Church's strings were over, with a newly adopted outlook of,
We are here precisely to educate ourselves against such foolish passions.
Europeans, specifically those in northern Italy, began to study the writings of ancient Greeks and Romans and believed that great things weren't just possible through the Church, but by the individuals themselves.
Anything's possible! Anything's possible!
This rebirth of ideas and philosophies became known as the Renaissance. Just to clarify, people still remained religious, they just also embraced things in the secular world as well. So why Italy? Well, to start, it was the place where the Roman civilization had started and thrived. Not to mention that due to European warring and the economic conditions of the time, Italian cities were able to amass large sums of money.
Show me the money!
Naturally attracting wealthy patrons, which ultimately led to the cities themselves becoming banking centers. These patrons, or wealthy citizens, would hire artists and sculptors to recreate the statues and architecture of old. This afforded the opportunity for artists to incorporate an artistic style known as perspective, which not only gave the art a three-dimensional feel, but made the figures in the paintings look more lifelike.
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds.
The most notable of these was the Medici family. The Corleones of Florence, only minus the machine gunning and piano wire assassinations. One could argue that they were a Florentine dynasty.
But don't ever take sides with anyone against the family again. Ever.
One that produced a couple of popes, a few queens, and many Florentine leaders along the way. With this influx of wealth and booming creativity, people who had once escaped to the countryside and embraced the farming life during the Dark Ages were now returning in droves to the city, stirring up large-scale urbanization. Having to contend with powerful, wealthy, newly enlightened patrons who were able to conscript armies of mercenaries was only the earliest of the problems for the Church. The heavier blow came about with the invention of the Gutenberg printing press, a device that took the place of scribes and early clergy and increased printing speed, all while reducing printing cost. So why did it hurt the Church? All people, including the common man, would now have access to whatever was printed. Most notably, the first book printed in volume, the Gutenberg Bible. Ultimately, the Medici family became leaders in the Church and were able to sway them into embracing the artistry of the Renaissance.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
So, who were the primary contributors of the Renaissance? Leonardo, Donatello, Raphael, and Michelangelo.
MC Mikey. MC
Okay, so the Ninja Turtles were named after them. But here's what the real people were known for. Leonardo da Vinci was famous for his sketches that eventually became airplanes, helicopters, tanks, and submarines. And of course, you can't forget his paintings, the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper. Donatello gave us the bronze statue of David standing on Goliath's head and the equestrian statue of Gattamelata. Raphael painted the School of Athens and the Sistine Madonna. Finally, Michelangelo, quite the party dude, he painted the Sistine Chapel and sculpted a statue of David of his own. The Renaissance also gave way to brilliant writers and playwrights, most notably William Shakespeare.
I love your early work. Was this the face that launched 1,000 ships and burnt the topless towers of Ilium?
I have a new one nearly finished and better. The Massacre at Paris.
Good title.
Desiderius Erasmus wrote Handbook of a Christian Knight, Praise of Folly, and criticized the Catholic Church while pushing humanistic ideas like the importance of education. Thomas More wrote Utopia, where he questioned whether a perfect world was possible. He also refused to acknowledge Henry VIII as leader of the church and was subsequently beheaded.
But this basket's full of heads.
Jan van Eyck perfected oil painting, and he's known for his painting The Annunciation. Hans Holbein the Younger is known for his drawings and compelling realism in his portraits, particularly those recording the court of King Henry VIII. He's called the Younger because his father was called the Elder. Albrecht Dürer was a painter, printmaker, and writer generally regarded as the greatest German Renaissance artist ever, and he's known for his praying hands. Now it's time for a knowledge check. The Gutenberg printing press allowed books and letters to be produced quickly and was more affordable than hiring a scribe or having monks hand copy them. It also gave people access to books they never had previously. What was the first book produced in volume? Was it A, Praise of Folly, B, Utopia, C, Handbook of a Christian Knight, D, the Gutenberg Bible? If you chose D, that's right. So let's recap. The Renaissance was basically a rebirth of ideas and philosophies started by the ancient Greeks and Romans that prioritized education and creativity. It also served as a catalyst of change to bring the world out of the Dark Ages and away from the controlling power of the Catholic Church. Though people still remained religious, they no longer felt the weight of the church bearing down on them. All right, that's a wrap. What are you still doing here? Go home. It's over. That's it. Bye.